she sewed her nightmares into the curtains. He thought the old embroidered curtains were a charming, vintage touch to his new home. He was dead wrong. Now, every night, he's forced to live out the terrifying nightmares of the woman who sewed her sanity and her screams into every last thread. Section 1. Leo had always been a sucker for things with a past. So when he first saw the old house tucked away on a street of forgotten Victorians, it wasn't the peeling paint or the crooked porch that got him. It was the curtains. You could see them even from the street, hanging in the master bedroom window, heavy and ornate. They were a deep, dusty rose, embroidered with these intricate, swirling patterns that seemed to squirm in the afternoon light. The real estate agent, a guy with a practiced, toothy smile, called them a unique, original feature. Leo just called them a masterpiece. He was a writer, a man who built worlds from words, and he could feel the story woven into their fabric. He pictured a woman from a bygone era, her fingers painstakingly guiding a needle, her thoughts and dreams becoming part of the design. The house was a steal, really, and the curtains sealed the deal. He moved in at the end of summer when the air was thick with the smell of decaying leaves and the promise of a chill on its way. The first few days were just a blur of unpacking. He'd saved the master bedroom for last, kind of a reward for all his hard work. When he finally stood in the room, the setting sun cast long shadows across the floor. The curtains seemed to just soak up the dying light, their rosy color deepening to a bruised purple. He ran a hand over the fabric. It was heavy, almost damp, and the embroidered threads felt thick and coarse, like hardened veins. A weird metallic smell, like old blood and static electricity, clung to them. He just chalked it up to the smell of age, of a house left to itself for too long. That night, he went to bed feeling totally at peace, the heavy curtains drawn tight, sealing him in his new sanctuary. Section 2. The first dream was unsettling, but the kind you forget by lunchtime. He was running through a forest, trees clawing at him with spindly branches, while some formless shadow flickered at the edge of his vision. He woke with a jolt, his heart hammering his ribs, and he was tangled. The heavy rose fabric of the curtains had somehow come loose and was wrapped around his legs, tight as a shroud. A surge of panic rose in his throat as he fought against it. The material felt strangely warm, almost alive. He finally kicked himself free, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He sat up and stared at the window. The curtains were back in place, hanging perfectly still. Their embroidered patterns looked almost serene in the pre-dawn light. He figured he must have been thrashing in his sleep, caught a foot in them. Simple, logical. But as he got out of bed, he couldn't shake the feeling of the fabric on his skin, the way it seemed to cling, to hold on. He told himself it was just the stress of the move, his mind playing tricks. He had a deadline, a story to finish. He didn't have time for nightmares. The next night, it was worse. The formless shadow now had a shape, a grotesque parody of a woman, her limbs way too long, her face a vortex of swirling thread. She didn't chase him. She beckoned to him, her fingers stitching the very air, pulling him closer. He woke up screaming, not just tangled, but bound. The curtains were wrapped around his entire body, the coarse threads digging into his skin like 1,000 tiny needles. A low, humming vibration seemed to pulse from them. This time, getting free was a desperate struggle. He fell out of bed, landing hard on the floorboards as the fabric finally let go. He lay there, trembling, sweat beading on his forehead, just staring at the innocent-looking curtains. This wasn't normal. The thought, cold and sharp, cut right through his panic. Section 3. Leo's days quickly became a waking nightmare. He was exhausted, his nerves shot. The words for his novel just wouldn't come. All he could think about were the curtains. During the day, he'd find himself staring at them, trying to make sense of the patterns. The swirling embroidery no longer looked like abstract art. They looked like captured screams, like faces twisted in agony. He could see figures being devoured, bodies falling into black pits, monstrous shapes birthing shadows. He started seeing things from his nightmares while he was awake. A glimpse of a too long limb in a mirror, a shadow in the corner of his eye that seemed to stitch itself into the wall. He tried to take them down. With his hands shaking, he set up a stepladder and reached for the curtain rod. But as his fingers brushed the fabric, a wave of nausea hit him so hard, he almost fell. The metallic smell was overwhelming now, filling his lungs. The threads seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic beat, like a dying heart. He stumbled back, suddenly convinced that if he pulled them down, the whole house would come down around him, that the walls themselves were held together by these cursed threads. Desperate, he started digging into the house's history. It took a week of sifting through dusty town records, but he finally found her. Her name was Ilara, a seamstress who lived in the house a century ago. The records were sparse, but a note scribbled in the margin of an old property log sent a chill down his spine. It said she had simply vanished. One day she was there, famous for her incredible embroidery, and the next, she was gone. Neighbors at the time had reported hearing faint, muffled screams at night, but everyone dismissed it as the wind. Ilara had been plagued by what the old texts called terrors of the night. She had no family, no one to miss her, no one except the house and the curtains. She hadn't just been sewing patterns, she had been sewing her nightmares, trying to trap them, to give them a physical form outside her own mind. Section 4. This knowledge didn't bring Leo peace. It brought pure, undiluted terror. He finally understood. He wasn't just having bad dreams. He was living Ilara's. He was her unwilling audience, her successor. He tried sleeping in the guest room, but it was no use. The nightmares followed him. He'd still wake up tangled in his own bed sheets, that faint, metallic scent clinging to him. He was becoming a prisoner, just like she had been. His sanity started to shred. The line between the dream world and the waking world just dissolved. The embroidered threads weren't just on the curtains anymore. He'd see them in his food, coiling like worms in his coffee. He felt them under his skin, a phantom itching, as if they were trying to sew his own flesh and make him part of the design. The final night came without any warning. He was too tired to fight, too broken to even try the couch. He just collapsed into his bed, the curtains hanging like silent executioners by the window. He didn't dream of being chased this time. He dreamed he was the one with the needle. His hands, gnarled and old, were stitching a face into a piece of rose-colored fabric. It was his own face, twisted in a silent scream. He woke up, but he wasn't in bed. He was standing in the center of the room. The curtains were wrapped around him, but they weren't just tangled. They were fused to him. The hair-like threads had burrowed into his skin, weaving in and out of his flesh, pulling him tight against the window. He could feel them moving inside him, 1,000 tiny needles rewriting his biology. He looked down and saw the embroidery spreading across his own chest, the same swirling patterns of agony. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, a single, coarse thread emerged from his lips. It coiled in the air before weaving itself back into the fabric. The curtains swelled around him, cocooning him, pulling him deeper into their folds. And through the fabric, he saw her, Ilara. Not a monster, but a woman with eyes full of a sorrow so deep it had become its own form of madness. She reached for him, not with hands, but with threads, pulling him into the endless, silent nightmare she had sown. He was the final stitch, the last captured scream in her masterpiece of horror. Conclusion. A few months later, the real estate agent showed the house again. A young couple this time, so excited for their first home. They loved the vintage charm, the original woodwork. "And these curtains," the woman said, her eyes wide. "They're just beautiful. So unique." The agent smiled, that same practiced, toothy smile. He didn't mention the writer who'd bought the house before them, the one who just vanished, leaving behind an unfinished novel and a strange, metallic scent in the master bedroom. He just told them they were a charming, original feature. And as the couple stood there, admiring the intricate, swirling patterns, they didn't notice that deep within the fabric, a new face, twisted in a silent, eternal scream, was now part of the design. Sometimes, the most beautiful things hide the darkest secrets. What you see as charming might just be a carefully stitched nightmare waiting for you. If you have a story about a place or an object that felt wrong, share it in the comments below. And if you want more stories that will make you question the world around you, make sure to like and subscribe. You never know what's really hiding in the shadows.